Guys, I'm Abigail Ostrowski. I'm here with Kelsey Bosselait, and I'm interviewing her for her photography career. So, if you wanted to start out by kind of talking about what got you into photography, I know before you talked about you worked at a wallpaper company, and
Yep.
then you started out with photography. So, how did that kind of happen?
Yeah. So I started learning photography when I was in college, just like as a fun creative thing to do outside of schoolwork. So that's where I learned like the basics. And
You worked at a wallpaper company, and
yep.
then you started out with photography. So, how did that kind of happen?
Yeah. So I started learning photography when I was in college, just like as a fun creative thing to do outside of schoolwork. So that's where I learned like the basics. And then I got a job work. Can you hear me? There's like a bunch of trucks going by
Yeah,
outside.
yeah, you're good.
Okay, good. So yeah, I started working for a wallpaper company doing marketing for them, and I did like all their copywriting, so product descriptions, blog posts. But then the other part of my job was running their YouTube channel. So I like filmed all the videos, edited them. I was in all of them, so it was like just me doing everything. Um, and so that's where I learned a lot more about like how to work a camera and like got more into kind of the technical side of things. And so I started offering photography as a business while I was working there. And then that kind of started to pick up a bit. And I was like, I think I like this more than my full time job. So I wound up quitting that and doing photography full time. So I worked there for 2 years and I started my business like a year in. And then I went full time a year after I started my
Mhm.
business.
That's awesome. How did you kind of get like your feet off of the ground when, kind of transitioning into that career?
A lot of it was just like using my network. So, and that's still how I get a lot of my leads is like through networking. So before the pandemic, I used to go to a lot of meetups for like wedding vendors. So I get a lot of leads from like other photographers who are booked or other wedding vendors, like people that run venues or people that do florals, all that kind of stuff. They'll like refer me to their clients. So
Mhm.
I've always been primarily like a word of mouth business. I've never done much like online advertising is like my main source of business.
That's awesome. Do you like
Yeah.
you feel connected to, so I know you work within like the Canal District at certain points.
Mhm.
I know you've worked for Crompton Collective, the Harbor
Yeah.
Dash. Do you feel like still connected to that area and like do you enjoy working throughout there?
Yeah, definitely. And like, so when I started working there, it was just the antique shop. There was nothing else there. And it just worked out. Like I was looking for an internship that was kind of fashion based because I've always loved fashion. And that's how I actually got into photography was I had like a fashion blog in college. So I would take pictures of myself. And that's how I learned like the basics. So I started interning at Crompton and then um, in the meantime, I was doing some photography for Crompton, and that's actually how I got my first wedding. Was I did our like wedding week event. I was just shooting it, doing coverage of it, and
Mhm.
we had some of the girls try on wedding dresses, and I took pictures of them, and someone saw it, and that's how I booked my first wedding, which was crazy.
That
Um,
is crazy. That is so
yeah,
cool.
so I was like, I've never shot a wedding before, but they booked me like a year out and I learned a ton in the meantime and it went well. So the way I quit my job was I gave like 8 weeks notice. Like I gave them so much notice
Mhm.
and because I knew they were going to have a hard time finding someone else because there weren't like a lot of creatives applying for jobs in like the Boston area, which was where I was working. They were like, everyone out here is in like tech or medical. So like they
Mhm.
spent months trying to find someone to like do these more like creative type jobs. And I was like, this, when I found it, I was like, that's perfect for me. Like writing video, I do all that. But so I gave my notice and then I like quit the job. So the week my job ended, I had like a week to move out of my apartment. I moved back home with my parents because starting a photography business is like really difficult to like make a full-time income. I still live with them now and it's been like 4 years. So I was thinking I was gonna move out like this year, but then pandemic happened, so that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So I quit my job, moved out. I gave like 8 weeks notice. Like I gave them so much notice, and because I knew they were gonna have a hard time finding someone else, because there weren't like a lot of creatives applying for jobs in like the Boston area, which was where I was working. They were like, everyone out here is in like tech or medical, so like they spent months trying to find someone to like do these more like creative type jobs. And I was like, this, when I found it, I was like, that's perfect for me. Like writing video, I do all that. But so I gave my notice, and then I like quit the job. So the week my job ended, I had like a week to move out of my apartment. I moved back home with my parents because starting a photography business is like really difficult to like make a full-time income. I still live with them now, and it's been like 4 years. So I was thinking I was gonna move out like this year, but then pandemic happened, so that didn't happen.
Yeah.
But so I quit my job, moved out, and then I had 3 weddings, 3 weekends in a row. So those were my first 3 weddings I ever shot.
Oh,
So it was
wow.
like back to back to back, like kind of a crash course. And they actually all went really well, which was good. I had like watched so much YouTube videos before. I had shot a lot of portraits and stuff. So I had like a good grasp on like, directing people and shooting in different lighting conditions and doing that kind of stuff. But weddings are definitely like a whole different ball game.
A whole
So,
different thing. Do
yeah,
you have
the
any like
first,
advice for shooting your first like wedding?
I would definitely recommend people, if they can, second shoot with another photographer. So a lot of photographers they'll like, I do this sometimes too, where people will add on another photographer to their package. So I'll be like the main photographer, and then I'll have someone else with me that like I'll shoot the bride getting ready, they'll shoot the groom getting ready, and then for the rest of the day, we just are getting like alternate angles of everything.
Mhm.
So people get more like photos that way, kind of more coverage, and then you get like, if there's at any point where there's, we split up, like sometimes after the ceremony, I'll take the couple and their family and the wedding party for portraits, and I'll have my second photographer cover a cocktail hour. So if there's any point where like there would only be like 2 things going on at once, then we can split up. So if you can second shoot for another photographer, that's a great way to like see how weddings run without all the responsibility of like setting everything up and dealing with the clients and doing the contracts and all that kind of stuff. You get to like kind of be a little bit more of an observer, and you get to see how the day goes without being like the only one capturing everything.
Do you ever do it alone? A wedding?
I actually do most of my weddings alone.
Oh, wow.
I'm really comfortable with it, but
Mhm.
I'm also comfortable shooting with like someone else. But most of my couples don't wind up adding a second photographer. So I just run around all day, and like I like literally don't stop shooting the whole day pretty much.
Oh my gosh, so
Like,
that's so much on you all, like that's hours. You're doing that for a very
yes.
long
Yeah,
time.
most of my weddings are 7 or 8 hours, which isn't bad. They used to be longer, and then I realized that you don't really need that much coverage.
Mhm.
So most of them are 7 or 8. The couple picks like how long they want, but I recommend usually 8 is like a sweet spot for most like traditional weddings. And then, yeah, I take usually like around 3,000 pictures at a wedding for the
Wow.
day. And then I usually deliver around 1,000. So
Oh
it's
wow.
like
So
a lot of, I just cut out any like duplicates because there's a lot of times where I'm taking like a lot of pictures of like the same moment, and I'll just keep the best ones from that. So
how do you like kind of pick out the best photos for, because do you feel like your personal opinion gets in the way of what the client might want when it comes to like the style?
not really, because I think a lot of people pick me specifically because they like my style.
Hmm.
Like my photos, I try to lean towards a little bit less like pose looking photos, and I try and go for more natural looking pictures. Sorry.
It's
And
okay.
I'll do so like instead of doing a lot of prompts where it's like put your hand here and like do this, I try and do more action based like movements with my couples. So I'll have them walk, or I'll have them like say something funny to each other. So I'm getting more of like authentic movement and authentic reactions rather than like a prompt picture where it's like stand here and put your
Yeah.
arms like this. Like that's what I'm trying to avoid for the most part. So
Yeah.
I
No,
take a lot of candids at weddings, and then when I am doing post photos of like the couple, I try and like make it a little bit more relaxed so that you get more genuine pictures. Because I don't like when people look like really like stiff in photos.
Yeah, no, because you don't want that. What
Yeah.
kind of like what is your inspiration for your style of
Um, I've always liked like more of like the candid, like motion based stuff. Like back when I was first starting out doing like fashion photography, one of my biggest influences was Free People, which I'm sure you know. So their
people?
photography has always been more like lifestyle based rather than like just like a model standing. They've done a lot of like things that are in a specific setting that goes along with what, you know, the model's wearing. So that was definitely a big influence for even my like fashion photography when I was first starting, was trying to like take pictures that kind of made sense. Like I never wanted to take a picture of like something that was just like a to be a picture, if that makes sense. I wanted there to kind of be a story behind it that would like be a reason why this person was in this setting doing this thing. Sometimes I'll do like more conceptual stuff, but for the most part, I'm trying to like make it seem like it's something that could be
Worth
happening
shooting.
naturally
Yeah.
outside of a photo shoot.
Yeah, that is really cool. Do you have like any photographers like off the top of your head that you kind of like look to for that?
So actually I don't follow that many wedding photographers. I used to, and I just wound up like comparing myself to them, and then I would feel bad. So I actually follow a lot of like fashion bloggers. I follow a lot of artists, like traditional like painters and illustrators and that kind of stuff. And I pull a lot of inspiration from there and like get inspired by like the different conceptual shoots that like bloggers will do. So Teza is a girl that I've been following for a long time. Um, I just started following this girl, Susie Shattuck, and she does a lot of really cool like shoots with like big gowns, and like I think she shoots them all herself too, which is really cool. And then who else? There's a girl, Kimberly, who does all these shoots like in her room. She takes the pictures herself. She like was trying to be a model and couldn't get signed, so she just started taking pictures of herself instead. And she like does
That is so
all
cool.
these amazing shoots all the time and like builds all this stuff out of like cardboard and makes it look amazing. So I follow like more of that side of things rather than wedding photographers.
Yeah. Yeah, and because you brought up the comparison, how do you kind of like, like battle with that? Like, I'm sure that you dealt with that like a lot, especially when
Yeah,
you first began.
I feel like it's like more of an online thing. Like when I'm in person talking to people, I'm not like comparing myself. And like two of my best friends are also wedding photographers and we talk to each other all the time. So I feel like it's definitely more of like a online thing that happens, like the whole like Instagram like reel where it seems like, oh, like this person's like busy all the time and they're shooting all these like most amazing weddings and like I'm not doing that. And so I don't know. I feel like it's kind of like a lot of things. It's been fostered in the like online highlight reel kind of thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. That I 100% get that. I feel like even in our day-to-day life, we're like that,
Yeah,
besides like being in photography.
yeah.
Do you have any like piece of advice that you would give like either like to yourself when you were younger or like just to like somebody starting out?
I'd say if you're starting out in photography, first of all, use whatever camera you have. Like phone cameras are really good now. Like I wouldn't necessarily like charge someone for a shoot with like an iPhone, but you can learn so much through an iPhone camera. And there are apps. There's an app called Moment that allows you to control all your settings manually. So you can learn about how to like control your settings the same way you would on like a DSLR or a mirrorless camera.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so you can learn so much without like spending a ton of money. Like
Mhm.
I learned almost everything from YouTube of just like Googling things, and there's so much really great like free information out there. Another great resource is Skillshare. It's like an online platform. You pay like $10 a month and you get access to like hundreds of classes, and there's classes on photography and business and art and like SEO and all these different kinds of things. And then there's like fun classes too that's like
Mhm.
embroidery or like hand lettering. Like, so I learned, I took like 2 courses on there that were taught by this like old British guy, and I learned a lot about photography from there. And then the other main thing is just to like shoot as much as possible, because that's where you really learn like how to work with what you have and like how to direct people. Because at least in my field, and I think a lot of areas of photography, one of the biggest things is just making people comfortable. And like that's something that you can only do hands-on. Like you can't learn that from a video necessarily, because you want people to trust you, especially with their wedding. Like, so I do phone consultations with all of my couples before they book, so that I can make sure that like we mesh well together. Because I always say, like, when picking your wedding photographer, one of the main things is making sure that you like them, because they're going to be with you for your whole wedding day. Like you're going to spend probably more time with them than almost anyone else. Like they're there the whole day. So you really want to make sure that you're comfortable with your photographer and that you guys like get along well, and that you understand each other. So
How would you say is like the best way to like build that trust with a new client when you've never met them before?
So when I talk to my clients before they book, I have like a list of questions that I ask them just to get to know them better. Like I ask like, how do they meet, and like, what do they like doing, and like, what are their interests? And then I ask more like wedding details. So I kind of just feel them out, and like, I think they do the same with me to like be like, do you get my jokes? Like, do you understand what I'm saying? And then when a couple books, all of my main packages include an engagement session. And I started doing that just so that I can meet in person with the couples before the wedding, and they get to see how I work. I get to see what kind of poses they like and they respond to, what kind of prompts they like. So like I just shot an engagement session a couple weeks ago, and the groom got so excited when I was having them like skip around and like do all these like silly like motion-based things, and he was like, oh my god, this is so fun. So I was like, I'm gonna keep that in mind for the wedding, that like these were your favorite like parts of the shoot. So okay, so I picked a few different like categories of favorites. So I picked like ones that were favorites from a technical standpoint, candids, and then some fashion photos. So I'll start with the technical ones. Let's see. An
Wow,
engagement shoot that I shot last year, and it was actually shot after sunset. It was like a kind of like dreary, like gray day. So something that I do a lot and have like incorporated into my style is that I love golden light. So even when I don't get it, I've learned how to fake it. So off to the side of this couple, I had a flash with like an orange filter on it, so that when it flashes, it looks like sunlight. So that's something that is kind of big in my style. I tend to incorporate this a lot, is like trying to get that golden light, even if I have to like make it myself. So this one is like an example where I think it came out pretty well and like looks natural. Like I don't think people would look at that and be like, oh, she used a light for that.
Yeah,
Like,
I would never know.
like sunlight. And then let's see. This one is an example of a candid that I really liked. So this was a wedding I was shooting up in Acadia National Park in Maine. And I just loved the moment of it, and like the composition of, this was the bride and then her brother actually, and they were just happened to like walk by each other. And I was like kind of down below them, so I just got the sky behind them. And I just loved like how it was centered and how it has all that negative space that draws your eye to the people. So that was an example of candid that I really liked.
Yeah, that is really cool.
And then this was the other candid. This was just a little girl running around at a wedding. And I just thought it was really cute. Like I love photographing kids. I've learned through like photographing flower girls. So she was just like zipping around the venue, and I loved like her holding her dress up, and like I felt like it kind of captured like being a little kid, just like at a wedding where you're like supposed to be serious, but you're like, no, I'm just gonna run around and have fun. And I loved that.
That is so cute.
And then let's see, I'll show you this one for a fashion one. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Did that work?
Yep.
Okay. So this one I shot in New York City on a trip with my friend. Kristen is the one in the photo. She's a fashion blogger, so I used to shoot for her all the time. She moved to North Carolina, so I don't shoot for her anymore, but we used to like get together like once a week and I would shoot pictures for her. So I just loved like the colors in this and the way that the light from the sign like lit up her hair and her skin. So she has pink hair anyway, so it made it look even cooler when the red light was on her. And I loved like the lines of the staircase kind of like leading you to her, and then the like mix of that and then the sign, and then like having kind of that negative space around them so that your eye goes to her. And like, I don't know, I loved kind of the composition of this one.